নমস্কার। আজ বিধাননগর টাইমসের পক্ষ থেকে আমরা চলে এসেছি শ্রীমতী রীতা ভিমানির সানি পার্কের অ্যাপার্টমেন্টে। আমি লোপামুদ্রা। আজ ওনার মুখ থেকেই আমরা সবাই শুনে নেব ওনার প্রফেশনাল জার্নির বিভিন্ন দিকের কথা।
নমস্কার।
So I am very lucky to introduce Mrs. Rita Bhimani, and today ma'am will share her journey, her professional journey, and the different fields in which she has worked very successfully.
So please go ahead with your first question.
Okay.
I'm really happy to meet you and to know about Bidhannagar Times. I think a lot of online journalism is the way forward today, I feel, because we of course have been used to print journalism. We've grown up with it. My husband was a print journalist. Of course, he was also a well-known commentator, and I have also from the beginning loved print.
Okay.
We started with typewriters, then went on to iPads and everything else, and everything in between. But let's go back to some of the questions you have.
Okay. Ma'am, we all know that it's been a long journey. If I take your professional journey, it's about 50 years.
Yes.
And there are different things, the way you have done your authorship, your writing in columns of different dailies, and at the same time you have made films, and you have also, and especially you are also I would say the CEO, or you have the founder of Rhythm Communications, which started in 1991. So I would just want to know that was this entire journey very smooth?
I think this is a very good way to start, and a very good question, Lokamudra, because when I started, the profession was still very young. Although people before me, one generation before me, particularly people like my father, late P.N. Mukherjee, he was one of the first public relations managers of Tata Steel. So I grew up in a small town in Jamshedpur, and I grew up around public relations to see what that profession was all about, how he grew it, how Jamshedpur was showcased to the rest of the world as a premier city, which was a steel city, but it had everything. It did wonderful things for its employees, and it was a complete package of a township. In those days we didn't talk about CSR, but that's what it was. So when I went to America, I went there to study my master's, and I did it in journalism. That's when I came across professors who were in public relations, and I imbibed a lot from them. So when I came back, I think it was the most natural thing to do, partly to get into journalism. I started writing when I came back. I could not get full time into journalism because in those days they didn't want you to have journalists, particularly women, who would be doing night duty. So we couldn't do that, but you could be a freelance writer, of course. But then when the opportunity came to get into a job, my first job was with the Tea Board India, which was something that was trying to promote tea around the world. Yes, Indian tea to the rest of the world, and it gave me a wonderful opportunity to understand about that particular genre, that particular industry, which is one of our mainstays, I would say, of West Bengal particularly, but of India. Tea is something that really resonates with everybody around the world. So it was a lovely way to start, and I did publications for them, which was translated in various languages. Like, I also appreciate the fact that Bidhannagar Times is in 3 languages, which I really like. I think it's important that we show an identity that is multifaceted. So you were asking me about my journey, how smooth it was or wasn't. I think from the beginning, if you show yourself as a professional, if you get into the mode of knowing what you want to do, how you want to project a particular industry, what are the things that you can bring to the table in your profession, then I think it's not that difficult. So from there I went on to a multinational called Indian Aluminium, and I spent many years. I spent about 18 years with them. I think it was a learning process, but it was also a giving process, because that's when one could grow. I actually went to various international conferences, and from there I could see the way people worked in other parts of the world. In fact, they actually invited me on the board of directors of the International Public Relations Association, which used to be largely an all-male organization and an all-white, until some of us came in from these parts, from India, from Malaysia, and all over. In fact, Mr. Shonut Lahiri, he was the first Indian who was the president of the International Public Relations Association, which was, you know, very prestigious for us also to know that somebody like him could be there at the forefront. We actually went for, when he was inducted in London, we actually went there, and you know, we were part of a big conference at that time there. So, so that was the journey with this multinational, which again gave me a lot of challenges. And from there I found that after a while you want to do something on your own. I think you yourself will also endorse that entrepreneurship is the way forward. And when I started in 1991, it was the year of liberalization, and I felt that why not take up this challenge of setting up one's own company. I used to find when I would go for these international conferences that a lot of people were independent consultants, and I asked them, I said, what is your structure, how do you do it? And you know, you'd be surprised, Lopamudra, that how people came forward to help. They said, this is how you should structure it, this is how you should bill your clients. I said, I can't do the same billing as you people do in America or in England, but I did it in the way that it would go with Indian market and the local markets and so on. And I never did have to market myself, because if you've been in a profession this long, I think people come to you. They know your reputation, so they come to you. By then I had already written a couple of books on PR, because it's important to write about it, to go to various forums, to speak about it. And the third thing is also teach the subject. And I really enjoyed mentoring lots of students over the years, over say 20 years. We used to teach at Pailan, which is a 3-year degree course in media science. Initially I used to think, how will you teach people media as such? Then I found that our course was very varied. So you could learn about print and electronic journalism, you could learn about public relations and advertising, you had to learn about computers. A lot of people were very excited about filmmaking as a career, about photography as a career. So seeing the students who have come out of some of these courses, I feel that there's a huge lot of opportunity waiting for them, and the doors are open for them to get into different professions. So that's been a kind of journey. So that's how, and that's how I started with Rhythm. I've enjoyed the journey. I've enjoyed facing a lot of different kinds of industries and different situations, and also of getting young people to come and work for me. That has been something that's given me a lot of satisfaction, and I think they have also
Enjoyed.
Oi, what you say, Juto Shelai Theke Chondi Path. They had to learn the works when they came here. They weren't just sitting around and waiting for work to happen like it happens with larger agencies. They had to do everything on the job. And I can tell you, the girls did a much better job than the guys. Sorry to say that, but they did. They would go to the printers, they stay up till late at night, and they would make sure that the publications came out in time.
Okay, that's great.
Right. Carry on.
Yeah, like coming to public relations, because that plays the most important role in your professional journey. So, and since you are also a very good author, and you have penned quite a number of books, so I would just like to know, from where did this flair come from? Because not everyone is into writing, and not everyone can gain this flair. Like, from where did you get it?
It has to come from within.
Yeah.
It can't be taught.
Right.
You have to either have it in you, and then of course you have to refine it and grow it and develop it and read and read and read a lot before you write and write and write more. I actually started at the age of 6. That's my mother was a writer. She was a writer of short stories and poetry, and she was equally fluent in both English and Bangla. She was quite fantastic because my grandfather was a doctor. When he went for his FRCS to England, to Edinburgh, he took his family with him, and from there my mother used to write, imagine in her time, Bilater Diary, which used to be published in a magazine called Mukul.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard about it.
Yes.
So that's why she instilled in me this love for writing. And there was something called the Shankar's International Children's Competition. It used to be a big fat magazine, almost like a book, where they would have children from 70 different countries participate in writing and in also in drawing and painting. So I would get prizes every year, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then at the age of 15, I got the Vice President's Gold Medal for the best creative writing. So, you know, from then it was there. And then, of course, you know, you start writing. When I went to college, one wrote. When I went to America, the editor of the university newspaper asked me to write a weekly column. She's still my friend after all these years. So yes, so it started then. Then when I came back, there was a lot of column writing on art, on music, on food. For Anandabachar, I used to do a column called Bektigato. Yes, for years and years. So you can imagine all the personal problems being tackled. But that was not so literary. It was more an advice column. But the others were much more creative. Much more creative. So the column writing always gave me certain inspiration, and you know, it feels good when people are reading you in the newspapers. But the book writing is something more solid. It goes to different students, it goes to a larger audience, it stays. Yes, that's why the books happened.
Okay. Now, one of your books, which released in the year 2018, if I'm not wrong, that is PR 2020.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So that was also forwarded by Dr. Sashi Tharoor.
Yes.
Yeah. So in that book, you know, what we found is it's like a guidebook for all the entrepreneurs, for the CEOs, as well as for the digital marketers, you know, like people who are into brand creating. So this is really a Bible for a person, you know, who gets into business. So could you please just share that what kind of branding will really help the entrepreneurs, you know, who are planning maybe to start their ventures?
I think this is wonderful that you've actually done your research and your homework on that book, because that's exactly who it was aimed at. It was aimed at entrepreneurs and newbies and people who are going into startups. So I gave a lot of tips to all of those people. I think what's important for these people who are going into the IT industries, or they're starting their small ventures from where they want to go to the angel investors and have them invest. So one of the things is to be able to have a certain presentability, and this is something that I am talking about in my next book, which has already been written, but which will not be published until the end of this year or maybe beginning of next year. But the whole,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
you know it.
Yeah.
So the presentability factor, the fact that they should be upfront, they should know their work, they should be able to present what they want to do to an investor. And you have to do it in the best way. You've got to be smart yourself, you've got to look smart, you've got to talk smart, and you've got to have credibility about your subject. So if you have these things, I think a lot of people can succeed in life, in whichever profession. You know, it's also for journalists. They also have to be presentable. But presentable not just in appearance, which I think is very, very important, but also in their knowledge of facts and how to be able to apply that at the right time. Like, for instance, what you're doing right now.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Okay, like today, you know, what we see is people are more into branding and more into digital marketing, online presence, but most of them, you know, they lack quality. Like, how important is to have quality apart from these? You know, only branding cannot really bring a person up to the mark. So how important is quality? What does it, what kind of a role does it play?
Quality is extremely important. You brought up a very sore point with me, because people think that just because you're a social media expert, that you'll be able to just say whatever you want to. No, it has to be backed up by some maturity, and that's where that quality comes in. People are writing rubbish, some of it,
Right,
on
exactly.
social media, and I think they've got to gear themselves up much better. There are influencers now who have come into the picture, and influencer marketing has become very big, and the brands that are being promoted are being done by these young influencers. Now, it's all very well to do a hee hee ha ha kind of thing, but I think it's much more than that. You know, if you're going to be able to actually ride the social media waves, you've got to have that responsibility to the people you're talking to. Yes. So quality really, really matters a lot.
And what's your opinion about today's music? Because most of them are auto-tuned in the studios.
Today's music, actually, I would say it has evolved hugely. And I think we also have to come to terms with the fact that music has changed and musicality has changed. But to me, like we were talking about quality and how you present and how you have to have the maturity, I think with music, you must have your basics right. Then you can go into experimentation. But you can't just jump into it without knowing.
Yes, without having the base.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
that is very important.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, we are almost towards the end of the interview, so I would just request you to say something about rhythm communication, because that's your brainchild.
That's my brainchild. I never expected to continue it for so long, because often people come up to me and say, "Why are you still continuing? Is it still on?" And I say, I don't see why not. As long as I can think and I can ideate and I can create, and I can also create space for my clients, or think intuitively for them. If I can do that, then if I can add value to their product or through their branding, then I don't see why one can't continue it. And that journey has been very exciting, because I've had all kinds of, every type of industry, whether it's the steel industry or the tea, or people who are coming in from outside the country, and they want their brand to be in front of people. So then you have to guide them in a different way, to let them know the rules of India and how they should behave here, and how we can then present them to the particular target audience that we are that they're looking at. Absolutely, it happened with in a couple of cases where I just met out of the blue. And this is the exciting thing about Ritam, that often you just encounter people out of the blue and they say, well, can you do this job for me? Or they are looking for someone and I happen to be there at the right place at the right time, and then you take their work ahead. So it is interesting. It's really, the thing is that you have to keep on being focused, keep on working hard, that you can't let up on. And the other thing is that you have to take responsibility for whatever even your assistants are doing. If they do something wrong and something goes wrong for the client, you have to take the blame. I have to take the blame. I can't say that my assistant goofed. No, that's when your supervisory skills have to come in. You have to make sure that nothing goes wrong. So at every stage you've got to track what is happening. Yeah.
That is right. And one more question for you. You are also into, you have a very good idea about CSR. So there are many NGOs, who really work hard and they are genuine and they are honest. But at the same time, there are NGOs, who really are not that, they are not that credible. They don't have that credibility, and that is why, the ones who are good, they are suffering. So what exactly is CSR, and how can the genuine ones really get into it? How can they be funded by different companies so that they can do the better work?
It will always even out at the end. People who are not transparent, not ethical, will definitely get shown up. So the ones who are genuinely doing work will continue to be sought out by companies. And when you're talking about CSR, I think companies also have to look at CSR in a holistic way. They can't just say we'll spend 2% of our net profits on doing some charity work, so to say. It's got to go beyond that. It's got to be something where they make a meaningful contribution. They have to pick something very specific and make that kind of contribution, and then you will find that it grows more for them. So, and they have to also include their employees also into this whole exercise of CSR. It cannot be just one check being written to an organization.
Because most of the time, it's misused. The money is misused. So
that they have to track.
Yes.
Companies have to.
That is where.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am, it was very nice talking to you, and we got to know so many things and so many tips from you. I'm 100% sure that everyone will enjoy this interview, and at the same time they have also got many tips and the right ways how to work. And a big thank you from Bidhanagar Times to all our audience. সবাই ভালো থাকবেন, সামনেই পুজো, সাবধানে থাকবেন, এনজয় করবেন কিন্তু সাবধানে। নমস্কার।